Hello, and welcome to the Mind Your Faith podcast, the podcast where we create the bridge from struggle to success. Each episode features a special guest who will speak about a hardship or mental health issue that they have gone through and how their faith helped them. These guests will share their story, coping skills, and ways to conquer. I know you'll love it. Let's get into the episode. My name is Mailee, and I am the host of the Mind Your Faith podcast. Today, we'll be discussing the topic of losing someone really close to you unexpectedly. This is a hard thing to go through, especially when you are in high school. High school is already a lot for teenagers, and now losing someone close to them does not make it any easier. I know that you are all going to love today's guest. She's going to talk about her experience going through this pain while she was in high school, and I know y'all are going to be impacted by her powerful story. This person has a huge impact on my life, as I would not be the person I am today without her, because she's my small group leader. Let me introduce you to Emma Sweiderk. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
It's going to be so fun. I am so ready for everything we're going to talk about today.
Yes, yay. All right, so I already touched on what we'll be talking about today, but please begin to tell us your story.
So my story kind of begins when I was in high school. I was probably ending my freshman year, so the summer and sophomore year, and I met my friend Spencer. He was just a bubble of fresh air. He was friends with everyone. He was nice to everyone. Like, you knew when Spencer was in a room because it was really hard to miss him. He was loud, he was rambunctious, but he really left people better than when he found them. And so the summer going into sophomore year is kind of when me and him became friends. And after that, we were literally inseparable. We did everything together. And just a little bit about Spencer. Spencer was involved with everything. He was in band, he was in theater, he was at every single sports event. He did every single extracurricular activity that you could in high school. Like, everyone knew who Spencer was in Englewood. And all throughout high school, me and him did a lot of things together. And one of the things that we did together was we actually started going to youth group together. We started going to Coast Life Youth when I was a junior and he was a senior. He was a year older than I was. And, we would go to youth every single Wednesday night and we would just have fun because Coast Life Youth is fun.
Yes, it is.
But like I said, me and Spencer did everything together. And through those years, he really became my best friend. We went through a lot of lows together. We went through a lot of highs together. And I can easily sit here and say that, through high school, Spencer was my best friend. He was the person that I would go to everything about. He was the person that I would spend every single moment of my life with. Like, if we weren't in school, if we weren't at church, like, I was with Spencer no matter what we were doing. But then Spencer graduated, and then I was entering my senior year. And in this time in my life, I was going to Coast Life Youth, but I wasn't really walking with the Lord. Like, I would go to youth on Wednesday nights, go to church on Sundays, but I would still be partaking in worldly things. I would go to parties, I would hang out with people that I probably shouldn't be hanging out with, and I developed addictions through this. With just like drinking every weekend. I got into vaping too. So I was struggling with a lot of things through high school, but it didn't really seem like it because I was just, this bright, bubbly girl on the outside that just covered all of my emotions and all of my feelings with humor. I still kind of struggle with that today, but we won't get into that. Um, but my senior year is when Spencer graduated and a lot of my friends graduated. I was a lot of friends with people in the grade above me. So when I was entering my senior year, I was like, kind of nervous right now. And high school is already like high school is high school. Like, I don't even have to explain that. Like, high school is just a struggle on its own. And I didn't really see that much until I graduated high school of how like hard high school actually was, like mentally. physically, like emotionally. High school takes a toll on some students. And, stepping into my senior year with not a lot of friends, it was kind of hard for me. But I found my way through it. I was still really close with Spencer. He was actually going to school in Tampa at the time, but he would come home like every single weekend. Like I remember we had this really dramatic goodbye when we sent him up to college, and then he was home like the next weekend and was home like every single weekend that he could be home. But a little bit into my senior year, probably a few months in, it was Thanksgiving break, and Spencer had came down um to spend time with some family. And it was a Sunday night. He was heading up back home, and he was like, I'll be home on Tuesday. I have a hair appointment. Like, I'll see you on Tuesday. Da, da, da. And I remember saying goodbye to him that Sunday night. And it was literally just like a see you Tuesday. We typically would like hug each other and be like, love you, bye. But I remember that night specifically, we didn't hug each other. We didn't say love you. And it was actually that night that he got into a car accident on the highway. Very unexpected. I remember being at work and his mom texting me like frantically, like, have you talked to Spencer at all? Have you called him, messaged him? Like, he's not answering his phone, and his location's been in the same exact spot for an hour now on the highway. And, you know, in high school, it's really, or like in high school and college, like especially with parents that have your location, it's really normal if you're trying to sneak around your parents, like turn your location off so they can't see what you're doing, or like freeze your location, like especially on like Life 360. Um, and so that's what like me and my friends kind of thought he was doing, was like, oh, Spencer's probably just doing something he's not supposed to be doing. So he probably has his location paused or something. And I went on Find My Friends, and I could see like his location was like updated like now, and it was on the highway. And so, we were kind of all getting a little worried, my friends who were like, what is Spencer doing? Why is he in the same spot? And I remember being at work and I was talking to my manager about it, and he went on like the highway report, and he saw there was an accident right where his location was left. And at the time, I didn't know it, but Spencer was actually being bay flighted to Tampa General because he was in a four-car accident. And he actually got out of his car. And when he got out of his car and was running to the median, he got hit by a truck. And so he had to get bay flighted to Tampa General, and he actually passed away not that Sunday night, but the following morning at 1 a.m. And so I went to bed that Sunday night, um, thinking like I'm gonna wake up and like I'm gonna have to go to the hospital and see Spencer. And but I actually woke up the next morning to a phone call. My friends kept calling me. And in this season of my life for school, I was dual enrolled, so I didn't have to go to school the first two periods. So I was like sleeping in until like 8:30 my senior year. But I woke up to phone calls at like 7 in the morning. Like I had like 10 missed calls from my friend Kayla, and my friend Chloe kept calling me and calling me and calling me. So I finally like woke up and I answered, and she's just like, hey, Spencer's mom wants us to come over. And I wake up and I'm like, okay. So I literally just wake up, I brush my teeth, and I walk out. I literally walk out the door. And Spencer only lived like 2 minutes away from me. So I got in my car, and on my way over to Spencer's house, for the little time I actually had to like actually process what was happening, I was just thinking like Spencer's just gonna be at the house. Like he's probably beat up a little, probably got a few broken bones or something. Like I honestly really didn't know what to think. And I remember waking up that morning and it was so gloomy outside. Like it was just overcast, gray clouds in the sky. It was drizzling. And it just seemed like the world was upset that day. Like when I walked out of my house, it seemed like the whole entire world was upset that day. And I remember pulling up to Spencer's house, and my friend Chloe had already been there. Our friend Kayla was on the way. And you could just feel the heaviness when as soon as I got out of my car, I could just feel the heaviness. And I walked in the front door and his whole entire family was there. His mom, his dad, his sister, his aunts, his uncles, his cousins, like everyone was there except for Spencer. And so I sit down at the kitchen table with my friend Chloe, and we're kind of just sitting there waiting for our other friend to get there. And his dad and his sister are sitting on the couch, just not really saying anything. And Dawn, his mom, she's kind of just pacing back and forth. And then finally she's like, okay, I can't wait until Kayla gets here. And she came up and she knelt before me and Chloe, and she was just like, Spencer was in a car accident last night and he had to get bay flighted to Tampa General, and they couldn't save him. And he passed away this morning at 1 a.m. And I remember just being in such a state of shock that I couldn't do anything. Like I couldn't move. I felt like I couldn't breathe. And I sat there and I was staring at the ground, and I could hear Chloe next to me, like absolutely just losing it, sobbing, breaking down. And I felt like I had no emotions in that moment. I felt like I couldn't react in that moment. Like there was nothing for me to do. I was just kind of wishing like to wake up from the nightmare. I was wishing that like none of it was true, that none of it was real. And I truly can say I've never felt anything like that in my life before. I still haven't. I've never felt that way in my life ever. And it's such a rare feeling, such rare emotions that like I don't even really think I can put words on what I was feeling in that moment. Um and I just sat there with a blank stare on my face because like there's no one ever prepares you for stuff like that. Like no one ever is like, okay, this is what's gonna happen when your best friend passes away in a few years. And my friend Kayla got there and she found out and everything. And then our one friend was still in school, so we had to call her out of school. She came over, and that day was just, it's a day that unfortunately I'll never forget because it's life altering news. Like you'll never forget those moments in your life. Um, but yeah, it was life changing, to say the least. And um the few days after, I had to go back to school, and everyone's just like giving you like sympathy eyes, but no one wants to say anything to you because you're like, what do you say in this moment? But I remember going back to school and just breaking down in front of people like randomly. Like that's just how grief works. Like
Mhm.
one minute you're fine, and then the next minute it's just like your whole world is just collapsing in front of you. Um, but I think it was 2 or 3 days after Spencer passed away, there was a youth night happening, and me and Spencer were very involved within our youth group, within our church. And so not only was his passing like, hurting like the Englewood community, like the school and everything, but it was really affecting our church too. Like the leaders within it were all feeling the loss and the weight behind it. And I remember just walking onto campus, and like that was really hard for me because that was where me and Spencer spent a lot of our time. And so walking onto campus, it was like, wow, this is just a reminder of like Spencer not being here. But I walk onto campus and as soon as I walk onto campus, I see a group of my leaders, and immediately they just pull me into a room and they just started to break down crying. They just broke down and started crying with me and hugging me and like telling me like it's gonna be okay. Like I'm so sorry this happened. Like God's in control. Like he's got you in his hands. Like I know it sucks right now, but like it's going to be okay. Like God is comforting you in this season. Um and I still, even after Spencer passed away, like I kind of was getting like less consistent with church and attending, and I really fell into as I look back into it, in the moment I wouldn't say I was depressed, but as I look back at it now, I definitely would say that was struggling with a little bit of depression at times just because I didn't really know how to cope with my feelings. So I would just shove them down and just be the funny person still that would cover everything with humor. Like I remember even a few days after Spencer passed away, me and all my friends were hanging out and like it would just get so heavy at times that like I was the one who would have to bring that the vibe, not the vibe, but like the atmosphere back up. Like I would have to crack a joke. I'd have to be like, okay, guys, like let's laugh a little. Like it's getting a little too heavy right now. But after he passed away, I would say I got least like less consistent within church and more consistent with the ways of the world. I picked up just more addictions and just continuing to surround myself in like environments and community that was not God centered. And that happened for a really long time. Spencer passed away in November. And for months and months, even a few months after I graduated, I still just continued in my ways. And it wasn't until the summer after I graduated in August, my co-psych youth was going to a conference with just a few hours away. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go. Like, let's see what's it's about. And I remember my mom put a down payment down. And then like a few weeks before the conference, they're like reaching out to me like, hey, you have to pay the rest of your balance. Like, are you still going? And I'm like, hey, I have to dog sit. And I didn't have to dog sit. And they knew that. Like, they knew I did not have to dog sit. And they were like, oh, well, like, can't you find someone else to do it? And because like they knew I was not being honest. I was
They're
like,
like, girl can't be real right
yeah,
now.
like they knew that I was not telling the truth. Like, especially because I was really close with a lot of these leaders too, and they're like, girl, like stop. Um, but I remember like I think we were leaving on like a Monday morning. Was it I think we were leaving on a Monday morning. And that Sunday, I actually went to church. And I remember this group of girls came up to me. And it was the girls I was gonna be staying in a room with. And they all came up to me and they're like, oh my gosh, Emma, we're so excited. Like, you're in our room. Like, we're gonna have so much fun. Like, da da da. And I was like, see, I'm dog sitting.
You're like,
And
there's this dog.
they were like, what? Like, come on, get someone to cover you. Like, please come on, like, come hang out with us. And I remember I left church that day, like, okay, wow, these people want me to go. Like, they actually want to hang out with me. They want to spend time with me. And so I remember that night texting my mom or texting my leader. And I was like, hey, I don't have a dog sit anymore. Like, how do I pay? I was like, is it too late for me to go? And she was like, no, girl, like pay the rest of your balance.
We're like, girl, we knew you were always going.
Like they were waiting. Like they were praying and they were waiting just for me to like
That's so
stop being so
funny.
stupid or something. But that night I paid the rest of my balance. I packed. And that night was honestly, I didn't know it, but that night was the last night I ever hit a vape in my entire life because I went to this youth conference and I didn't put any expectations on this conference because I never I was not a person of big faith. Like I literally like because I grew up in church and so like I always heard about God. I knew who he was, but like I didn't actually know who he was and what it was like to have a relationship with him and like all that he could really do. And so when I showed up to this conference, I literally had no expectations what was going to happen. I was just like, okay, we're here, let's rock it out. And it was on the second day, the second session of the second day, and I remember literally just feeling a touch from God. Um, and in that moment, like all of this like hurt and grief and heaviness and everything that I had been struggling with for so long, like I could just feel it getting lifted off of me and like him literally refining me in that moment. Um, and ever since that day, ever since that conference, my life has never been the same. And literally when we got back from that conference, I just started saying yes to everything that the church had to offer. With, serving, with being a group leader. That was when I first became a group leader, was this summer, after my life changed, with communicating on the platform, with joining a 2-year internship at church. It was just a yes to everything after that. And so,
Wow.
yeah.
Dang. That your story is so powerful. Like I obviously I knew bits and pieces, but like I didn't know the whole thing. And that was just incredible. Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing it. You kind of basically talked about this already, but how did God slash the church community help you through this time in your life slash continues to help you today?
I would say where I really found God within this time of my life was within his people. Because when all this was happening, I still didn't really, like, I wasn't really walking in communion with the Lord. Like, I was still doing whatever I wanted to, but it was definitely the church and the people within the church that honestly saved me, that kept me on a straight path, and honestly helped me stay on the path that God had for me to where I would be able to experience life change. And um, my small group when I was in high school is literally girls that I do ministry with today. Um, they were there for me. They hugged me. My small group leader, who is our student director, Joanna, she literally would sit there and she would cry with me because she went through a similar situation when she was in high school. She lost a friend at a young age too. And I would say what helped me get through that season and how the church played a role in that season of my life was just the people within the church and my friends in that season. Literally, my small group who was in it, there's other leaders in the church now. I literally do ministry with them today. And I can call them my best friend. And I met them in a small group. And it was a small group I didn't even want to go to. Like they would force me to my small group, and I'm like, I don't want to go. Like back then, we did not have a choice if we went to a group or not. Like they would force you into a group, and
You can't
I
you
was
can't
like,
just
I
sneak
don't.
out.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want to be here. Like, what the heck? And literally, it was my small group leader and the people within my small group that literally walked it out with me. And they were there on the day of the conference where God literally wrecked me. And we sat in a room and I was vulnerable with them for the first time. And we all just sat there and we all just cried and like they all encouraged me through it. And it's just little moments with them that I'll never forget. And they really helped me get through that season of my life.
Wow. What would you say were your most helpful coping mechanisms or the biggest things that helped you?
I would say my coping mechanisms then in my life weren't the best. I can definitely say though, what really helped me um get through all of those emotions and those feelings that I was going through was probably about a year after Spencer passed away. I went through our church does freedom groups. And I walked through a freedom group, and it's a 10-week curriculum where, we kind of walk through different areas of our life of where the enemy will try to, keep us in bondage. And it ends with a conference at the end where we get to just lay all that down at the altar and we receive prayer over all of those. And I would say that I really felt God do a work within me, and I let go of all of those, old emotions and old feelings and old heaviness, and I threw a freedom conference. And so I can confidently say that when it happened, I didn't have any healthy coping mechanisms, but like even today, like people think that like after a few years, like it's just easy after losing someone, but like there's still days that I have where like I wake up and I like think of Spencer and like it's a hard day for me. Like I'll see a video of me and him somewhere, or I'll see a photo of me and him like floating around somewhere, and I'm just like, wow, like that really sucks that I never get to see him again. But I'm just confident knowing that, he's in heaven with God. And but I would just say healthy coping mechanisms that I wish I would have taken sooner would definitely be going through a freedom group, and also just really pressing into like the peace of God and the comfort of God definitely would have helped me a lot more in high school when I went through all of that.
Mhm. I remember the night after pickleball, we were all like going through like funny pictures, and you took out a picture of you like holding a squirrel or something, and you were like, and we were all like, why would you pick up a squirrel? And you were like, well, I might not have been sober at the time. This is right
Yeah,
after Spencer died. I was like,
I
oh,
I went off the rails a little bit right after Spencer passed away, but God's a redeemer. He
yes,
restores
yes,
and he changes our lives, thankfully. Thank you, Jesus.
yes. How would you say going through something like this shapes you into the person you are today?
I would definitely say that going through this, it helps in certain situations. Like when I have youth students walking in and they've been through loss and they are grieving a family member or a friend, like I'm able to walk them through that. um and I would definitely say that going through a loss and going through grief, it it gives me an opportunity to press into the Lord even more. And so I would say that losing Spencer, it really sucked, but I literally wouldn't be where I am today if it didn't happen. Like, I wouldn't be involved with the church if it didn't happen. I wouldn't have the friends that I have now if it didn't happen. And I would say that I probably wouldn't be in church if Spencer never passed away. I probably, would be out doing who knows what right now if Spencer never passed away. And just a firm believer that God works everything for the good of those who love him and are called according to his
Mhm.
purpose. So I just truly believe that, it really sucked what I went through, but like God turns everything around for our own good. And I know that I'm on the right path that he has created for me. So I just really trust that and know that God is providing for me and he has me where he needs me. So
Wow. Are there any final comments or anything to add that you feel my audience needs to hear?
I would just say that if you are going through grief, or if one day you are going through a moment of grief, just know that God is the author of your life. He's the one holding the pen. We're not. And as
Mhm.
Christians, we need to trust God's plan and his purpose for our life. And so, like, it really did suck. Like, I hope that no one whoever's listening to this, I really hope that, you don't have to go through that pain. You don't have to go through losing someone so close to you. But, there's a chance that you're going to go through that in life. But just remember that, like, God is writing your story. He is the
Yes.
author of your life. And no matter what you're going through, like, God will turn it for the good. He will provide in a way. He will, in that moment, he'll be your Prince of Peace. He'll be your healer. He'll be your comforter. And just remember, like, he's in control and he will carry you through that season of your life. And he will strategically place people in your life for that season of your life. So just know that if you're in this season or you're going to go through that season, that God is literally holding you in the palm of his hands.
Yes, I love that. I ask every guest at the end of my episodes which Bible verse is their favorite and what's their favorite worship song.
Ooh, okay. So I feel like worship songs like always change, but my
Mhm.
favorite worship song at the moment is, oh my gosh, why am I forgetting the name of it right now? It's Pour My Love on You by Upper Room and
Oh,
Abby
that's a good
Koa.
one.
That's a good one. I don't know how I've never heard that song before. I recently just heard it
Me
the other
too.
day, and I'm like, Chef's Kiss. This is a good song.
Yes.
But my favorite Bible verse, I'm gonna read it to you. It's Hebrews 10:36, and it says, patient endurance is what you need now, so that you will continue to do God's will. Then you will receive all that He has promised. And the whole book of Hebrews is just so good.
Mhm.
It's such a good encouragement for believers and people, like, especially for me, who's someone in ministry, and like, we're always And just as Christians, we're always waiting for something in our lives, because we just got to function on God's timing and just patient endurance. I always just have to remember that patient endurance.
Yes, yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. I'm just so, so grateful for you and all that that you do in my life and everyone else in our group's life. And I just truly like enjoyed learning more about your story. Like I said, I didn't know too much about it, but now it's like, wow, the impact is huge. And I know my listeners are going to be impacted as well. And I am just so happy we were able to do this. So just thank you.
Thanks for having me. I had a lot of fun.
Me too. Also, thank you guys for listening. Your support means the world to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you choose to listen. Also, the video of the filming of this podcast episode will be uploaded to my YouTube channel, Mind Your Faith Podcast. And follow the Instagram at Mind Your Faith Podcast to stay up to date and catch the exclusive content on there. Please share with family and friends to continue the growth. Thank you all so much for listening. I'm so grateful for all of you. Remember, you're not alone if you mind your faith and keep your faith in mind. Jesus loves you. Peace out, y'all.